Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Outliers YouTube channel and podcast series and our program, Get to Know. I'm your host, DP Lyle, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Kathleen Antrim.
Thanks, Doug. It is great to be here. And we've got one of our most fabulous teachers for Outliers Writing University. She just nails it every time. We get such amazing feedback on her. And, it's no wonder she's an international best-selling author, USA Today, et cetera, et cetera. Hank Phillippi Ryan, welcome to Get to Know.
Thank you. It is such an honor to teach at Outliers. I learn something in every class I teach, and that is really part of the joy of it, don't you?
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Teaching,
And we learn something from you every time you teach. I mean,
that's for
it
sure.
really is. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, you just have a very succinct way of teaching that makes it so applicable and usable and user friendly. We
Thank you.
really, really appreciate it. And we're
So
so
funny.
happy to have you.
Sometimes when I'm writing my own stuff, and I think, oh my golly, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. What am I going to do? I've written myself into a corner, and I say, Hank, you teach a class about that. Why don't you just do what you tell other people to do? And it works. I think, wow, that really works. How surprising.
It's true. It's true.
Doctor, heal thyself. So I have a question, and I have my own thoughts on this, and I really would love to hear your perspective. When you became a writer and, really started to take this seriously and have it, be your career, um, how did that change your life? And did it change your life? And has it given you opportunities that you might not have normally had?
Well, of course, it changed my life massively and completely. I have been a television reporter for 40 years, and I've wired myself with hidden cameras and confronted corrupt politicians and chased down criminals and gone undercover and in disguise. But I guess it was 20 years ago, shockingly now, because I always feel like the new kid, I just had a really good idea for a book, and I knew it was a good idea. And I came home actually and said to my husband, I have a great idea for a mystery. I'm going to write a thriller. And Jonathan says, great, honey. He says, do you know how to write a thriller? And I'm like, how hard can it be? I've read a million books. But it was that moment, you all, that when I sat down and I absolutely, in this very desk, and I absolutely decided to do it. And I was unmovable. I was compelled. I was just completely devoted to writing this novel that I actually, no matter what I had told my husband, I had no idea how to do it. But I had been a storyteller for the previous 30 years. And I knew a story needed to have a character who you cared about and an important problem that needed to be solved, or else all would be lost, where the good guys win and the bad guys get what's coming to them. And in the end, you get some justice and you change the world a little bit. So I thought, okay, I know how to tell a story, beginning, middle, and end. I don't want people to change the channel when my stories are on TV. So I'm going to use that same pacing, that same way of keeping you interested in writing my novels. I also, and for television, I don't know the endings of my television stories because I'm out in search of the story. They're news stories, right? So I realized that I would still be in search of the story the same way, but I would just have to be, instead of researching documents and clues and doing interviews, I'd be researching in my own imagination and researching in my own experience. And I felt comfortable with that. The thing I didn't feel comfortable about, and the thing that was really life-changing, is that I didn't know whether I could rely on my imagination. I didn't know whether, after all those years of being a reporter, I wasn't quite sure that I could make stuff up. And that was a little bit of a roadblock for me. And I do remember having to sort of work on letting go of just telling things that had actually already happened and opening my mind to fiction. And that was a really marvelous moment for me.
Yeah, I know a lot of
I
writers
love
talk
that.
about that when they base a story on a true crime. Uh, Somehow they feel compelled to stick to the true story in telling their story, and you keep telling, no, this is just an idea. You take an idea and then you step way outside the box and do your thing with it. But when you're dealing with a true story, you almost feel like, well, I'm obligated to, did you run across that a lot when you were that, I
Well,
really can't do that. I got,
because it's not only, and I think it's interesting what you say so wisely. It's not only the story, but it's also the main character. In my first novels, the main character was a television reporter in Boston who worried that she was getting too old for her job and wondered what happened if you were married to your job in television and the camera didn't love you anymore. That was clearly scraping the bottom for an idea. So, but I got to a point in the book where my main character, Charlotte, or the reporter, had to drive somewhere. So I thought, oh, I hate to drive. So I hate to drive. So, that means Charlotte has to hate to drive. And then I thought,
well, especially in Boston.
well, that's true.
Good Lord.
And then I thought, well, no, she doesn't hate to drive. Charlotte loves to drive. She has a fabulous car. She loves to drive. She's a fictional character. And when I realized that my main character was not me, that was the door that opened for me. And you're so right, Doug, that I don't want to say don't let facts get in the way, but there are facts that are important, and then there are fictional facts. This is the only time in our lives that we can say fictional facts. There are fictional facts that have to be right for the book, but they
Right.
don't have to be real in real life. And that's a powerful thing. And that storytelling is not an easy thing. But wow, it is when you get in that flow of telling the story, and somehow your subconscious, if you're lucky, is offering you occurrences and happenings and actions and decisions and choices, and you think, where did that come from? And this is me typing. Where did that come from? And that is so magical. That flow, that storytelling rhythm, whether you think of it as the muse, or whether you think of it as your subconscious, or whether you think of it however. Sue Grafton used to call it the magic.
Mhm.
And she would just accept that this is what was happening. And that is what All This Could Be Yours, my book, is about. The sort of magic of storytelling and weaving a story, and how, in All This Could Be Yours, the main character is a debut author on book tour. And she has a voice in her head, which is the voice of her main character. And it's an interesting quote. There you go. And there's an interesting question about whether is she crazy, or is this what happens to all authors, that if they're lucky, they hear the voice of the main character in their head? I mean, we all hear voices. When I hear my character's voice, I am thrilled. But when a reader hears about, oh, we hear voices in our head, they may be a little skeptical about that. And that's part of what my book is about.
Well,
You know,
writing is hard. You know that. We all know that.
Very, yeah.
It is grinding. It is soul crushing. It is time consuming and all that. But that magic, isn't that the reason we do this?
some days I'll be writing and I think I have no idea, I have no idea, I have no idea. And then at
Yeah.
some point, I just think, oh, yeah, that's what it is. And I don't know, you all. Where does that come from? At some point, we don't know, we don't know, we don't know. And then at some point, something in our brain sparks and we do know. And we're not a different person. We didn't learn anything more. We haven't had any different experiences. We have not budged from the seat, but somehow our brain sparks an idea. And you are so right. That is what I absolutely live for. And I do think sometimes I think, I just don't know. I just don't know. I'm just going to give up for the day. And I think, okay, you can just give up for the day, but just stay at your desk for one more sentence. Just write one more sentence. And I say, okay, I'll just write one more sentence. And I can't know, I'm going to sneeze. Now I can't begin to tell you how often staying at my desk to write that one more sentence is the domino that falls that keeps me writing for the rest of the day. Because your brain will write it when it's ready.
Yeah.
And you have to, I know this sounds woo-woo, but you can't make it be ready. You have to allow it to be ready, but you have to be there
Well put.
when you have to be there when it's ready. The wonderful Ellie Griffiths wrote a book called Stranger Diaries. And the main character is an English teacher. And the English teacher tells her classes The muse only comes when you're working. The muse only comes when you're working. Now, I don't know why I'm taking advice from a fictional character, but okay. If it works, it works.
Why not? You
Yeah,
know, why not?
absolutely. But all of us deal with that imposter syndrome issue. Do you deal with it? Do you have that? And how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. I think imposter syndrome sometimes is just fear. Sometimes when we get fearful of something and our brain seizes up and we think, oh, I can't do this, and how could I ever do this? I will admit to you and confess to you that am constantly worried about never having another good idea. I say this all the time. In fact, it's like the first step in writing a new book is I'll never have another good idea. I don't know how I got those ideas for those other books. I don't know how I wrote those other books. I don't know how that even happened, but that's, that's over. That's never going to happen again. I'm never going to have another good idea. Even in order to control this, I even made a file on my email that was labeled book ideas. So when I started thinking about writing All This Could Be Yours, I thought, no, I have a file of book ideas. I'm just going to go look at that file and see what's in there. And it was empty. It was empty. So I thought, all right, any day now, I just need a good idea. So that's the hurdle for me. That's the imposter syndrome for me, is that I think I will never have another good idea. And my husband and my pals are so used to me saying this that they say, you always say this. And I say, yeah, I know, but this is the time it could be true. There's going to be a time it could be true. But I'll tell you my secret for this. As a television reporter, I have sat at the edit booth putting together my news stories for years and years and years. And there is always a moment in that edit booth when I think, oh my gosh, I forgot to ask, why did you take the money? I forgot to ask, are you guilty? I forgot to ask this key question. I forgot to get video of the bank, whatever it is. And I panic. And I realize after many years that what happens after the panic is the answer. And every time I fry my brain into this panic, every single time, the answer appears soon after. So now, and this is for all of you, now I've learned to embrace the panic. When I feel that panic coming on, I think, instead of being terrified, I think, yay, I'm panicking now. So that means the answer is about to appear. So I just use it for my benefit. I use the panic for my benefit and embrace the panic. And that's the way that I conquer it.
That
I
is a
call it the
great.
40,000 word panic. The 40,000 word panic. When I get to about 40,000 words, I tell myself, this isn't working. You don't know what you're doing. You're stupid. Da 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 da. All the things you talked about. And in the first couple of books that I wrote, it was real. It was paralyzing. It's like, oh my God, I'm a fraud. I can't. But now, after 27 books, it's like, shut up, you idiot.
Yeah,
You do this every time. Just write the next scene.
but isn't that reassuring that we can
Yes.
learn from our own experiences? Sometimes I'll look at my manuscript and after I've written something and I'll think, that is the worst sentence that anybody has ever written in the history of the planet. I just won the bad sentence contest. And then I think, yeah, it's pretty bad. Now just write another bad sentence and another bad sentence and another bad sentence, because you can fix it later. And that's the thing that people need to remember. This isn't a test like your teacher says, write an essay on how I spent my summer vacation, and you hand it in and you get an A or an F. This is writing a novel, which is essentially a process of storytelling, a process that's going to ebb and flow and get bigger and smaller and get broader and narrower as the story progresses. So what you do on one particular day is just a step along the journey. And the next day it'll be different, and the next day it'll be different. And the next day you can fix whatever it was. And the next day the puzzle pieces will come together in the way that you didn't know you meant, but it will reveal itself to you. So you just have to not stop. You just have to let yourself write a really bad page, or even a really bad chapter, or a really bad first draft. It's okay, because it's just the beginning of this discovery of the story.
This is such a great interview because you've got so many golden nuggets in here of advice and very practical with that. I was wondering, I realize there's sometimes when I'm writing, I'll write something and I don't know why I'm writing it. For example, in one of my books, I had a character who only smoked a half of a cigarette. And I don't know why. I mean, he just never finished a cigarette. And then suddenly at the end of the book, it saves his life that he didn't smoke the whole cigarette. So do you ever have that happen where it's just like your unconscious mind is working on something that you're not even truly aware of
You
until
know,
it comes out on the page?
this is why I do this. This is why I write, because those kinds of experiences where your subconscious knows more than your conscious mind is a journey into thought and imagination that I don't think we really understand. I mean, Lee Child used to talk about his first 100 pages of his novels were like, you know, those cooking shows, he would say, those cooking shows where they say, here's a basket of stuff and you need to make something out of the stuff. So he would say that the first 100 pages of his novel were his filling up the basket with ingredients for the book. And then the second half of the book was him taking those ingredients out of the basket and making the book out of them. So he had given himself things to use. So you gave your brain a half-smoked cigarette. And as you progressed through the book, your subconscious began to offer you reasons why that was important. It's astonishing and it's wonderful. In all this could be yours. One of the things that sets the action is my main character goes into one of her, it's a debut author on a glamorous coast to coast book tour that turns into sort of the book tour from hell. It's terrifying because she's happy, she's got standing room only audiences, she's beloved, the book is a wild bestseller, but someone is out to ruin her career and destroy the family that she had to leave back home. So, I knew that sort of premise. So she goes into one of her hotel rooms. She's in a different hotel room every day. She's in a different bookstore every day, a different library every day, different airport every day, different city every day. It's pressure, pressure, pressure. You both know it. So in one random hotel room, she opens the drawer of her nightstand and there's a locket. But in the first draft, she opened the drawer of the nightstand and I thought, and she finds something. That's the end of the chapter. She opens the drawer of the nightstand and she says, oh my gosh, what's that? And I thought, yeah, what is that? What is that going to be? I had no idea what was in the drawer. And I just took out a piece of paper and started writing down everything that could be in the drawer. And think about all the things that could be in that drawer. A photograph, a wallet, a watch, a book, you know, a pamphlet, a picture, a yearbook, you know, anything. I mean, I just wrote it all down. And I got to lock it. And I thought, oh yeah, lock it. Oh yeah, I can use lock. Lock it'll work. But when I had her find something in that drawer, I did not know what it was. And then the locket turned out to be the pivotal thing for the book. What, how, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's amazing.
I embrace that. I absolutely love that. That is one of the things that keeps us all writing. I think that, you know, people say to me, well, the twists and turns, your endings are so surprising. And I think, yeah, wasn't that a surprise? I mean, talk about a surprise ending. I surprise myself every time.
Exactly.
That is why I do it. If the surprise and joy leaves me, I will not do this anymore. But every day when I'm writing, I can't wait to find out what happens next. And I'm the only one who can know because I'm the one who's writing it.
Absolutely. So in a way, you're telling yourself the story.
Not in a way, in every
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
That's true. I am in search of the story and I can't wait to find out what happens next.
So you're a pantser. You don't outline.
Not at all. Not at all. I don't know who lives, who dies, who tells the story. I don't know. I mean, I know who tells the story, but the rest of it, I just don't know. And that's a tightrope. You know, that is really a tightrope because that takes some writer faith, doesn't it? To know that at some point you're going to write a 385-page novel with a beginning, middle, and an end. And you don't have any idea how that's going to be. But we understand what a story is, you know, once upon a time. And we're going to tell that with the rhythm and the architecture and the necessary music of a story. It has to have the flow of a story. And I'm willing to, it's like life though, isn't it? In real life,
Yep.
we don't know what's going to happen next. So why should it be any different in a novel?
I do exactly the same thing.
Oh,
To
you
me,
do?
outlining kills my creativity because I'm too boxed in after that. So I start with a couple scenes and start writing. I'd like to take credit for this, but actually someone else said it, that writing as a pantser is like being a trapeze artist.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
jump, the net will appear.
Yeah. Leap
And
and then
that's pretty much it. The net will appear. You think you're in a corner, but you're not.
I'm looking over here because I used to have that on my bulletin board, leap and the net will appear. And that is,
Yeah.
that is so true. But that is very difficult because it requires a lot of faith in the process.
Mhm.
And I do think that that's one of the things that's so necessary for any writer is that, you know, we have days of believing that we're good or bad or successful or not successful, or that the story is worthwhile or not worthwhile. But the faith in the process means the faith in the idea that we know what a story is. We know what's good and what's bad. We know that on any given day, the same story could be good or bad. We don't know. Somebody asked me once when I sent in a novel, they said, to my editor, they said, well, do you like it? Is it good? And I said, well, it's either the best thing I've ever written in the universe or it's absolutely terrible. It all depends on what the editor says. And like, that's the same book. You know, it can't be both. It can't be both of those things. But as an author, as a neurotic author, as we all are, I was able to carry in my head the possibility of these two completely opposite things about the
Hmm.
very same piece of writing. And welcome to writing, right? That's what we do.
Exactly.
So with all this could be yours, you know, you got this idea. How did you evaluate whether it was a great idea and that it could sustain an entire novel?
Yeah. What was the idea you started with when you
Yeah.
sat down the first time? It's like, I'm going to write a story about.
I can tell you exactly how it started. And you have all been in exactly the same situation. I was at the Poison Pen bookstore in Scottsdale, owned by the wonderful Barbara Peters. And it was just sort of a haven for all mystery readers and mystery writers. And I was autographing books and inscribing them at a book event. And I wrote, so wonderful to see you in Scottsdale, and the date. And then I thought, well, there's an alibi for someone. You know, it proves that I was in Scottsdale at that day, on that day. It proves that they were in Scottsdale on that day. It proves that we were together. So I started thinking about all the other things that all of us inscribed in novels, like, thank you so much for a wonderful evening. Really? You know, what could somebody make that mean? You know, or thank you for all you do. Like, what could someone make that mean? So nice to see you again means that you've seen them before and you know them. So I started weaponizing every single thing that happens on book tour. The person who sits next to you on an airplane that has your book, the bookseller that doesn't forgot to put up the posting for the event, the hotel guest who looks at you askance, the person who recognizes you in the TSA line, all those kinds of things, which, and not to mention that on your website and your website and my website, if I want to know where you are on any given day, I can just go to your events and I can tell, and I know exactly where you are. We do that on purpose, like, yay, come to my book event. But on the other hand, that's where I'm going to be. That's where I'm going to be live. And I'm also, when I'm at the event at XYZ bookstore, I'm not in my hotel room, you know, and I'm not at home because I'm live somewhere. You know, I was in the airport at some point and I posted on Instagram, you know, here I am, you know, in the make it up Phoenix airport at gate B42. And my publicist emailed me and said, don't post that you're at gate B42 in the Phoenix airport. You know, why would you do that? And I thought, oh yeah, I guess so. So all those things, I realized that being on book tour is glamorous and wonderful, and we love it, and we're delighted that our publishers pay for it, and we're delighted that the bookstores are full of people when we go. But you know, it's also really scary and really vulnerable and really risky and really stressful. You know, at every single turn, the plane could be late, nobody could show up at the event, the hotel room isn't booked, there's no Uber, it's pouring down rain, all those terrible things. And what about that moment in the Q&A when the moderator says, does anyone have any questions? And what if someone raised their hand and ask you something that you wish they hadn't, that indicated that they knew something about you that you wish they didn't know. And that's what this book is about. And I have to say, Doug, I'm a little bit afraid to say this, but there was never a moment in my mind that I didn't know this was a good idea. There was never a moment in my mind. It's a story about a best-selling author on tour with a book called All This Could Be Yours. So I'm about to go on tour with a book called All This Could Be Yours, which is about an author on tour with the book called All This Could Be Yours. It is super meta. It is super personal. It only takes place in airports and hotels and bookstores and libraries. It is like being on tour with a real author. And I tell all my author friends, don't read it till you get home from tour, because it'll freak you out.
Exactly.
Oh, for sure. So, Hank, tell our viewers where they can learn more about you and your books and where they can get your books.
Thank you. I am on Instagram constantly at Hank P. Ryan. My website, that's what the word I'm searching for. My website is hankphillippiryan.com, cleverly enough. And just go to events and it will tell you exactly where I'll be on book tour for most of the fall, and all about my new books and contests and all kinds of prizes and inside info. Sign up for my newsletter at hankphillippiryan.com as well. I'm also on Facebook at Hank Phillippi Ryan author, and I'm teaching at Outlier, so you can find me there always, always, always as well.
And you will also be at BoucherCon, and we're looking forward to seeing you there in a couple of weeks. So there's that.
Absolutely.
My
Absolutely.
book will be out the Tuesday after BoucherCon, and I am so excited and so thrilled. I cannot wait for you all to read it.
Yeah,
Oh,
cool.
so excited. I can't wait to get my hands on it. So, Hank, thank you so much. You are always a fabulous interview. And it's just amazing to me in just talking with you how many golden nuggets we get about the craft of writing. So, thank you so much for sharing. We really appreciate it.
It is always a pleasure. Thanks to you both. You are both such rock stars, and I'm really honored to be here.
And I'm going to ask our viewers to please click the thumbs up. That helps with our algorithms, and subscribe if you like the interviews that we're doing here. It gets these interviews out, and that way you will not miss one. And I'll throw it back to you, Doug.
Yeah, Hank, thanks. Your insights are always just overwhelming. They're so good, and we really appreciate you sharing them and teaching us too. I mean, we learn a lot when we talk to you. Can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks. And so until then, that concludes this episode of Get to Know here on the Outliers YouTube channel and podcast series. So until next time, keep reading, keep writing, keep having fun, and try not to get caught.
That's so great.